Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. But full disclosure, I am actually recording this on Saturday afternoon because Sunday is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. But if I miss some bomb-dropping data breach that everybody's talking about, I apologize if that happened Saturday night to Sunday morning here in the United States, time-wise. So with that, I'd like to thank the following people that helped me out in some way, shape, or form to get me a lot of these breaches, and that is David Walker, Jacqueline Wolf, Jason Dance, Mike Murphy, and Barrett Peterson. Guys, thank you so much, and if you have a data breach, please feel free to send it my way, and I'm happy to give you a shout out, basically here on this video and podcast, as well as on my radio show every 2 weeks. So with that, let's start with Scripps Health, very well known here in the United States as a health system. They're out of San Diego, and they were hit by a ransomware attack over the past weekend, forcing them basically into downtime. Now, some critical care patients were diverted, and the online patient portal was taken offline, according to local news outlets as well. Basically appointments for Monday were also postponed due to the cyber attack, and it disrupted operations at 2 of Scripps' 4 main hospitals, as well as their backup servers that apparently reside in Arizona. Now, providers and other clinicians are leveraging paper records, as telemetry has also been impacted at most care sites that Scripps owns. Access to medical imaging also appears to be down as well. This was a ransomware attack, apparently a huge one, and so hopefully Scripps will get back online and no data was taken. We will find out. Moving on, let's talk about Microsoft, because a previously undocumented backdoor is targeting Microsoft's equation editor. Now, here's what's going on. Basically, researchers from Cybereason detected anomalous characteristics in a newly discovered backdoor called Royal Road. Now, these researchers have been tracking these developments, and they uncovered an attack targeting a Russian-based defense contractor, and the research team defined this new backdoor Royal Road as a tool that basically weaponizes a type of document called an RTF document, and that exploits the vulnerabilities in Microsoft's equation editor. Now, if you didn't know, Microsoft's equation editor was included in earlier versions of Word, but was removed from all versions in January of 2018 because of security issues with its implementation. So heads up, if you are running basically older versions of Microsoft Office, and so there you are, obviously that's a huge problem. Also, moving on, let's talk about Microsoft again, and this time we're going to be talking about SharePoint servers, because we are seeing many SharePoint servers being breached, and here's why. They have a bug that allows attackers to take control of a SharePoint server and basically drop into a web shell, meaning they can run commands, and so here we are. That's a very serious problem, and we are seeing basically an attack group inserting ransomware into SharePoint instances. And while these attacks mark the first time that ransomware gangs have really targeted SharePoint servers at this level, the attacks did not come as a surprise to Microsoft, who issued a warning when the SharePoint flaw was discovered in 2020. So heads up, if you are running SharePoint, make sure it's fully up to date so you do not get basically mentioned here on breaches of the week. Moving on, let's talk about the Solicitor General of the Philippines, because around 345,000 files from the Solicitor General of the Philippines, including sensitive information for ongoing legal cases, has allegedly been breached and made publicly available. Now, here's what's going on. These files were publicly available since at least February, when researchers said it first discovered the breach and emailed the Solicitor General about these files. Both the Solicitor General and the Philippines government allegedly did not respond to the researchers' emails about this breach, which were sent on March 21st and March 28th. The documents were eventually taken down on April 28th, but the files have been accessed and downloaded by an unknown third party. And according to the cybersecurity researchers, the breach contained hundreds of thousands of files, ranging from documents generated in the day-to-day running of the Solicitor General office to staff training documents, internal passwords and policies, staffing payment information, information on financial processes and activities, including audits, and several hundred files titled with keywords such as private, confidential, witness, and password. Obviously a huge problem for the Solicitor General of the Philippines. Hopefully they will get a handle on that. Moving on, let's talk about another government. In this case, Belgium. We're talking about the government-owned websites because a massive denial of service attack basically hit most of Belgium's government IT infrastructure. According to the media, the attack also knocked offline internal systems as well. That is a huge denial of service attack. Now, people attempting to visit websites hosted on the Belnet network were not able to reach them and were basically getting error messages. The websites of the Belgian government and police services were also unavailable. Belnet, or the Belgian National Research and Education Network, is a Belgium internet service provider for educational institutions, research centers, scientific institutes, and government services. Belnet provides web services to higher education, federal departments, ministries, and international organizations. And due to this denial of service attack, Belnet customers are experiencing connectivity problems according to their disclosure. That's obviously a huge problem. Hopefully they will get back on their feet. And if it knocked out internal network as well, we are hoping that nothing was stolen. Moving on, we're going to be talking about 200,000 people who appear to be involved in a massive Amazon fake product review scam. This is crazy. I could actually do this as an independent video from Breaches of the Week. Now, this past Thursday, researchers revealed that a server that was public and online contained 7 gigabytes of data and over 13 million records, appearing to be linked to a widespread fake review scam. Now, it is not known who owns this server, but there are indicators that the organization may originate from China due to messages written in Chinese leaked during the incident. Now, the database contained records of roughly 200,000 to 250,000 users and Amazon Marketplace vendors, including usernames, email addresses, PayPal addresses, links to Amazon profiles, and both WhatsApp and Telegram numbers, as well as records of direct messages between customers happy to provide fake reviews and traders willing to compensate them. Meaning, I have a product and I need a whole bunch of fake reviews. Here's a service that will basically pair me up where I can pay people to write fake reviews on my, I'm guessing, crappy product. Now, according to the team that found this, the leak may implicate more than 200,000 people in quote-unquote unethical activities. We will see where that goes, but obviously there's going to be a criminal investigation into that, and I'm wondering what Amazon will do. I will keep you informed. Moving on, let's talk about 128 million iPhone and iPad users. And don't think just because you use an Apple product, you are free from vulnerabilities and infections. Don't believe the marketing lie from Apple. Now, you may not remember this, but a modified copy of xCode that surfaced on the web in 2015 was responsible for injecting malware into several iPhone and iPad apps that were subsequently uploaded to the Apple App Store. Now, thanks to the Epic versus Apple trial, internal Apple emails have revealed that more than 128 million iPhone and iPad users were affected by the xGhost malware that actually had Apple rewriting how they actually did or allowed apps into the App Store. It was a huge thing. Now, as noted by a report in Motherboard by Vice, Dale Bagwell confirmed in an email that 128 million consumers had downloaded more than 2,500 apps infected by this malware that came from this fake copy of xCode. In total, these 2,500 infected apps had been downloaded more than 203 million times in the App Store. Now, Bagwell was the iTunes customer experience manager at the time for Apple, and another Apple employer mentioned that, quote, China represents 55% of customers and 66% of downloads, also referring to this particular xCode Ghost malware. And according to more internal Apple emails, about 18 million affected users were based here in the United States. That's obviously a huge thing. And this trial of Epic Games versus Apple is bringing this to light. I'm wondering if this will cause a class action lawsuit at some point. Stay tuned. Moving on. We're going to be talking about more than 40 apps with more than 100 million installs because a research search engine, and I'll get to that, identified over 40 apps with basically more than a cumulative 100 million downloads that had hard-coded private Amazon Web Services keys embedded with them, which then put the app's internal networks and the user data at risk for cyber attacks, especially if you could reverse engineer the app. Now, This AWS key leakage was spotted in some of the major apps on the app stores, such as Adobe Photoshop Fix, Adobe Comp, Hootsuite, IBM's Weather Channel, and online shopping services like Club Factory and Holy. Now, the findings are the result of an analysis of over 10,000 apps submitted to a mobile app security engine. And if you want to check out your apps, I highly recommend you do this. Before you install them, you can look up their security score at bvigil.com. That's bvigil.com. I tried it out myself. I went ahead and I punched in one of these, and it gives me a score and it shows me a report of the potential issues. It is fabulous. I look up apps all the time before I install them. I vet them heavily. This is now part of my toolbox. I wish I had known about that sooner. Moving on, let's talk about CaptureRx out of Texas. They got hit with ransomware on February 6th, and on February 19th, an investigation into this attack determined that certain files had been accessed without authorization. Now, during the attack, cybercriminals exfiltrated files containing personal health information on more than 24,000 individuals. A review of this attack was completed on March 19th and determined that the security breach impacted 17,655 patients of the Faxton St. Luke's Healthcare in Texas and a further 6,770 patients at Gifford Healthcare, also in Texas as well. The number of Thrifty drugstore patients affected by the attack has not yet been determined. Now, HIPAA Journal reports that the CaptureRx is currently unclear how many of its healthcare provider clients have been affected, nor has the company finished its final tally on how many individuals basically had their PHI exposed because of this incident. Essentially, data exposed and stolen by the attackers that launched a ransomware attack include names, dates of birth, prescription information, and for a limited number of patients, medical record numbers as well. That is obviously a huge problem. Heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about San Diego Family Care, another healthcare provider. They announced this past Friday that they've alerted current and former patients and employees about a breach that may have involved their personal information. The possibly affected data includes names, dates of birth, social security numbers, or other government identifiers, financial account numbers, medical diagnosis or treatment information, health insurance information, and client identification numbers, according to San Diego Family Care officials. So if you use San Diego Family Care, heads up. Moving on, let's talk about AmeriFirst Financial Incorporated, not to be confused with Ameritrust, which is a different company I am not talking about right now. AmeriFirst has branches in California, Arizona, and Utah. Now, the personal loan information of certain AmeriFirst customers may have been compromised according to the data security incident notification that they have filed. AmeriFirst said that it discovered the breach on April 12, 2021, which infiltrated the bank's data storage from December 12th to December 10th of 2020. The information that was stolen includes first and last names, dates of birth, social security numbers, bank account numbers, tax ID numbers, Internal Revenue Service or IRS numbers, driver's licenses, passport numbers, and other government-issued identification cards and numbers. Obviously, a huge issue. Heads up, AmeriFirst Financial customers. Moving on, let's talk about the Brevard School Board, because cyber criminals could have accessed the identifiable information on 10,000 people last year through email accounts of 12 Brevard County School Board employees, according to a school district spokesperson, basically speaking this past Friday. Now, the school board became aware of strange activity in its systems on October 31st of 2020, and on January 4th determined that someone had accessed 12 staff email accounts without authorization. On March 24th of this year, the school board completed its review of the incident and identified individuals whose information had been accessed. A letter from the board dated May 4th was sent to thousands of people potentially impacted by this data breach, and here we are. The spokesperson said the email accounts contained information on students and adults, including some social security numbers as well, and it's not clear, basically, whoever accessed that information, who they were. So heads up to you if you're in Brevard County schools. Moving on, let's talk about Verkada. If you recall, a few months back, Verkada, who is a security camera maker, got very easily hit, and that was a huge thing to do because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of major companies like Tesla and some others. Companies are now actually disclosing essentially data breaches thanks to Verkada because it's a supply chain hit. And so this week, Halifax Health in Nova Scotia, Canada, declared a data breach. So heads up, Halifax Health employees and patients. Moving on, let's talk about the U.S. Agency for Global Media, or USAGM. This is a federal agency that basically has radio stations like Voice of America and other publications as well that go on around the world outside of the United States. And a data breach notification shared with Bleeping Computer by a former Voice of America White House correspondent, USAGM, discloses that they have suffered a data breach after falling for a phishing attack in December of last year. Now, this phishing attack allowed a threat actor to access an agency email account containing the personal information of current and former USAGM, Voice of America, and Voice of Cuba broadcasting employees who worked at the agency between 2013 and 2020. The exposed information includes full names, social security numbers of employees, and possibly their beneficiaries and dependents. So heads up if you've ever worked for USAGM, Voice of America, or Voice of Cuba. Moving on, let's talk about the possible data breach at Epic Games. Now, here's why we're talking about this is because gamer forums are lighting up with this one, but there's no official declaration that I can find as of yet, and here's what's going on. A person on Thursday was just notified by MasterCard that their name, password, and email was compromised on April 22nd of 2021 from epicgames.com. Then another one mentioned the same thing. Then on Twitter, a user posted this, and I quote, "I just got an alert that epicgames.com has possibly suffered a data exposure of over 106 million records, including emails and possibly passwords. This is why you need to make sure you don't always use the same password." I totally agree with that. Make sure you're enabling MFA, but we are basically going to keep an eye on this because we may have a massive Epic Games breach on our hands, and Epic isn't saying anything about it yet. We shall see. You heard it here first. Moving on, let's talk about Ultratech. They call themselves the, quote, worldwide leader in text telecommunications. And you know where I'm going with this because a breach notice basically to the state of Vermont says that they got hit on November 4th of 2020. Prior to that, they believe malware was installed on October 9th. It was a ransomware hit, and I'm not sure what personally identifiable information is out there because it was actually redacted from the disclosure that I read from the state of Vermont. So heads up, if you use Ultratech, you might want to check in with them because I don't know what information, if any of yours, might have been hit, but they are declaring a data breach. You can go read that for yourself. And finally, and we have a few different finalies for you this week because this week was just absolutely crazy. First things first, an update on that massive 3.3 billion records leak from a few weeks ago, which is a combination of multiple leaks that were aggregated in the dark web, and researchers found that, well, they've been sifting through the data and it ain't good. Now, a staggering number of the 3.28 billion passwords linked to 2.18 billion unique email addresses were exposed in what is basically considered the largest data dump of breached usernames and passwords in history. In addition, this leak includes 1,502,909 passwords associated with email addresses from government domains around the world, with the US government basically being the leader on this, taking 625,505 exposed passwords, followed by the United Kingdom at 205,099, Australia at 136,025, Brazil at 68,535, and Canada coming in at number 5 with 50,726. The top U.S. government domains affected by the leak were the U.S. State Department at 29,000 and change, the Veteran Affairs at 28,000 and change, almost 29,000, Homeland Security, my God, 21,000 and a half. NASA got hit for over 15,000. The IRS got hit for about 10,500. The CDC, or Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 8,904. The Department of Justice, almost 9,000. Social Security Administration, almost 9,000. The Post Office, just over 8,000. And the EPA for 7,986. Now, interestingly, this leak also included 13 credentials linked to emails of the Oldsmar water plant in Florida, as previously reported by myself here. That water plant had lye introduced, and if a employee hadn't caught that, we basically would have seen a town in Florida poisoned. I talked about it extensively, I want to say in January or February. However, right now there's no evidence that the breached passwords were used to carry out that cyber attack in February. My notes say February. Now, in contrast, only 18,282 passwords related to the Chinese government were there, and 1,964 passwords from the Russian government were there as well. So obviously those are much further down the totem pole. We shall see. Now, according to Sci-Hunt, founder and chief visionary officer, whatever that is, Felipe Daragon, who's one of the researchers doing this, and I quote, "It is an indication that the passwords in these countries made up of local alphabets are less targeted by hackers. It is an unexpected layer of protection in relation to the Roman alphabet," meaning because the Russian alphabet is Cyrillic and the Chinese language is also not based on the Roman alphabet as well, that they basically were able to fly under the radar because it's much harder to hit because most people don't read Cyrillic or read Chinese. So here we are. Moving on, let's talk about Peloton. This is one of our other finalies for the week, and they are having a bad week. Between treadmills that can kill you and now this news, if you own one of these things, heads up to you. Peloton apparently exposed sensitive user data, and basically they did this even after they knew that they had a leak. No wonder the company's stock price closed down 15% on Wednesday. Between deadly treadmills and data leaks, they are not having a good week. Now, researchers at the security consultancy Pen Test Partners this past Wednesday reported that a flaw in Peloton's online service was basically making data for all of their users available to anyone in the world, even when the profile was set to private. All that was required to basically get into this was a little knowledge of the faulty programming's interface that Peloton uses, and you could get right in. Now, the data that Peloton was exposing on you, heads up Peloton users, because this has nothing to do with the treadmill and everything to do with the account you've created there. We are talking your user ID, instructor's ID, group memberships, your workout stats, your gender and age, your weight, and if you are in a studio or not. Now, Ars Technica, basically where I'm cribbing my notes from, agreed to withhold another piece of personal data exposed because Peloton is still working to secure it. That's right, they've secured it since then. But a blog post by the Pen Test Partners published on Wednesday said that the APIs required no authentication to get this information, and their researchers said that they reported this exposure to Peloton in January, and they received acknowledgement from Peloton, but then basically Peloton went silent 2 weeks later. The company silently provided a partial fix, and rather than basically providing the user data with no authentication required at all, the APIs made the data available only to those who had an account. Meaning, instead of exposing it publicly, they were exposing it publicly, your account, to all the other account users. This change was better, obviously, than nothing, but it still let anybody who's subscribed to the online service obtain the private details of any other subscriber. Basically, when Peloton was informed of this inadequate fix, they got no response. That's obviously very frustrating, and basically Pen Test Partners said as much, so obviously that's a huge thing. And so here we are, they have slightly fixed this. Hopefully it will get better and Peloton will indeed fix this completely, but heads up to you if you're a Peloton user. They're not having a bad week, and apparently your data has been exposed publicly and also to other users. And finally, we are going to be talking about the largest pipeline in the United States for petroleum here, Colonial Pipeline, which is the largest fuel pipeline in the US, and they just shut down operations after suffering a ransomware attack. This is a huge, huge thing. This is critical infrastructure to the well-being of the United States economy. So obviously this is a huge problem. Now, Colonial Pipeline transports refined petroleum products between refineries located in the Gulf of Mexico and markets throughout the southern and eastern United States. The company transports 2.5 million barrels per day through this 5,500 mile pipeline and provides 45% of all fuel consumed on the eastern coast of the United States. That is a massive number. Now, according to a report by CNBC, Colonial Pipeline suffered a ransomware attack yesterday, basically that would be Friday, that forced them to shut down their entire network to basically prevent the spread of this malware. And on Saturday, Colonial Pipeline issued a statement confirming the attack and basically stated that they temporarily shut down their pipeline operations. Are right now responding to this attack, and their operations are essentially shut down by virtue of that. And to quote, on May 7th, the Colonial Pipeline company learned it was the victim of a cyber attack. In response, we proactively took certain systems offline to contain the threat, which has temporarily halted all pipeline operations and affected some of our IT systems. Upon learning of this issue, a leading third-party cybersecurity firm was engaged, and they have already launched an investigation into the nature and scope of the incident, which is ongoing. It's not known at this time what ransomware operation is behind the attack, but I will tell you, I am scouring all of the ransomware gangs that we track, and I'm pretty certain I will start seeing Colonial Pipeline information out there. But this is a huge, huge problem. Something I think that the federal government really needs to ramp up. And I know that the Biden administration has been looking at enhancing cybersecurity laws and rules. We have this new CMMC from the Department of Defense that is starting to be adopted by other agencies out there like NASA, Department of Homeland Security, I believe Treasury as well, is looking at this, which means we are going to start seeing this trickle down into the critical infrastructure providers, those private corporations in the United States. I do not know the defensive posture of Colonial Pipeline, but if they got in so deep that they were able to launch ransomware attacks, which actually can possibly shut down basically 40% of the oil flow to the eastern seaboard of the United States, that is a massive, massive problem. And I have to imagine federal and international law enforcement is going to be taking a hard look at whoever did this. This is a huge, huge problem. This is a huge piece of news, and odds are it's flying under the radar as we talk about politics or sports or everything else, but you heard it here, and make sure that you are aware of these things because this is a scourge. And you might think, oh my God, we just get breached all the time, I give up. No, that is not the case. We are not going to go Amish on my watch here. We are going to enjoy and embrace technology as best we can, but we're going to marry that with cybersecurity. We're going to marry that with awareness. It's beyond important. So make sure when you are getting those cool gadgets, playing with that computer, going to those sites, that you're putting good precautions in place so you don't end up on my list here every Sunday. That's a huge problem. Hopefully Colonial Pipeline will get back online, and hopefully these criminals will be found, arrested, and prosecuted as required. And that is your news of the day. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. And happy Mother's Day. Take care.